control. Breach in 5, 4, 3.
What's up, guys? I'm Uncle Freedom, coming to you on another glorious and well-deserved day off. Yay, hallelujah. And today we're going to take a look at one of my favorite things in the whole world and something I get asked about all the time, and that is hand loading right for you? So we're going to dive into some myths and misconceptions that people get told when we talk about hand loading. It's sure to be a good time. Hopefully I give you some stuff to think about. So if that sounds fun and interesting to you, or maybe you've been on the fence about should you start reloading or not, go ahead and like, subscribe, tell a friend, because I'm going to give you the best info I can from a guy who hand loads all the time. So first up, let's get looking at this. The first one I hear all the time is that hand loading is cheaper. Yeah, no, it's not. Even in the good old days when I was buying components at about 2 cents a primer, I just shot more. Like a lot more. So yes, I was a much better shooter. I shot all the time. I spent more time at the range. However, I didn't actually save money. I just shot more for the same amount of money. Now, this is also a yes and no question. The reason I say it's a yes and no question, because depending on the load that you are trying to develop or work up, it can be cheaper to do that specific load. A lot of the guys that shoot match, myself included, match ammo is more expensive, but me hand loading it, I can create that with developed loads tailored to my gun that are going to shoot and perform better. They're also going to be cheaper on average to produce that round. One of the other big things you have to think about if you're going to do this, that where it becomes cheaper is, are you willing to buy your stuff in bulk? If your objective when you go to hand load is to buy a pound of powder and 1,000 primers, and that's what you're going to do, it is not going to be cheaper, because you need to be buying things in a large quantity. And when I say in a large quantity, I'm talking about 8 pounds plus of powder at a time, primers in that 5 to 10,000 range, cases 500 plus at a time, depending on what you're doing, and bullets, more importantly, between 1,000 and 5,000 projectiles at a time. That's where we really start to see the cost savings in it. And even then, once we do it, some of the high volume reloaders, think USPSA guys who hand load all their stuff, they shoot 30,000 rounds a year. Those guys are running on very highly specialized, like, progressive press systems. A lot of people see this guy in the video. This is my Lyman All-American 8. It is an 8-slot turret press that I use for load development, but primarily what I'm loading for is for match ammunition, or for hunting ammo, or for defensive loads. And I do a lot of my handgun loading because it's just easier to find, because I already have the components. Number two is, it will never be as cheap to get into reloading or to reload as it used to be. You have heard this said before, and I am now old enough to be like, back in my day, buying stuff to reload with was far, far, far less expensive. It was not hard for me to walk in and find a good powder that worked with what I wanted, readily available on a shelf. And I could do that for way less money. I could buy primers for $20 per 10 things of primers. A great example is this guy. Like, this is CCI number 34. So this is the primer used in M118LR for 308. So the 175 grain Sierra Match King, coming out at about 2,700 plus feet per second out of his 22-inch 308 gun. This primer is what's used in that load. I like this primer a lot, but I bought these up for $21 per box of 1,000. This same sleeve of primers, just this guy right here, is about $8 or $9 for just this now. So it'll never be as cheap as it used to be. Although I will say components are becoming more and more available. I see good powder selections at my local gun stores regularly now. I see primers all the time, but even now that primers are becoming more and more readily available, it is still between $70 and $100 per brick of primers, whereas it used to be between 20 and like 31. And for the really good stuff, like 40, we're talking match primers. So it will never be as cheap as it used to be. Back in the day, one of the biggest things you had to think about was I was spending between 2 and 3 cents per primer. Now that number is more between 6 and 7 cents at a minimum. So it'll never be as cheap as it used to be. Third is that you need to understand that your time is valuable and irreplaceable, and reloading will eat up a crap ton of time. I know we all tell ourselves, I do it because it's therapeutic and it's cathartic. And in some responses, that is correct. But there is so much stuff that you have to think about in reloading that eats up time, and your time is valuable. You get no more of it. Just think about it this way. If I went to work for an hour, how much would you make for an hour of going to work? It's going to take you roughly an hour to do some of the steps in reloading ammo. That money counts into it. So your time is worth money. You have to think about that in context when we talk about reloading ammo. It is going to cost you a substantially higher amount of time to get the same amount of ammo you could have bought at the store. So just be prepared for that. Although there are some ways around it, which leads me great to my next one, which is number 4, that reloading can and is a tedious act, mainly in the brass prep, cleaning, annealing, all of this stuff where we're deburring and chamfering case mouths, or where we're, if you shoot crimped ammo, good God, getting rid of, swaging out primer crimps, all of that. But there are ways around it. I'm kind of famous for prepping up large lots of brass at a time, then going and watching TV with my kiddos, and I'll hand prime cases because I do not like priming on a machine. I like hand priming, but I'll prime cases while I watch Bluey with my kiddos. And then I've got between 100 and like 700 primed, ready to go cases that are completely sized out to spec and ready to go. So when I come down and start loading, I don't have to deal with that part. But there's sorting brass, there's priming, deburring, chamfering, swaging primer pockets, trimming brass, which is a royal pain in the ass. All of that stuff takes time. And if you go really far down the rabbit hole, we're talking about volumetrically weighing and sorting out cases. And another big part of that is, in addition to doing all of those things, you could be turning case necks. You can go way far down the rabbit hole, but just know that a lot of it is very tedious. It is very time consuming. And remember, your time is worth money too. Number 5, load development can and oftentimes is a very drawn out process for a rifle, but it is absolute magic when you get it right. A lot of people think in their head, I've got 100 of these great projectiles that were relatively expensive. I've got 100 match grade primers and I have 100 great pieces of brass. You will not have 100 ready to fire rounds from that. You have to go out and shoot rounds. You have to test them for velocity, standard deviation, extreme spread. You have to shoot groups and see if the actual round groups through your gun. There's a lot of stuff going on. Out of your 100 rounds, if you started cold bore and you did everything right, you're still only going to get out with maybe 55 rounds of loaded ammunition out of your 100 round purchase. But the good news is, going forward, as long as you get things from the same lot, your results should be relatively similar. The next one, I love this too, is there's never an ammo shortage for me because I hand load. Well, except that usually when you cannot find ammo, you cannot find components either. Just like the big bad wolf that was the great ammo shortage debacle of 2020, here's the reality of this. If a company, which there are very few of, that makes primers in America, is going to make primers, they're going to use them in factory ammo, which they can't produce fast enough because they make more money off of it, which is the reason that primers became astronomically expensive and out of the reach for most normal hand loaders. So just because there's an ammo shortage does not mean you're suddenly going to be able to reload ammo. In fact, a lot of times it's harder because the same companies that are making ammo are vying for the same products you're trying to buy as a hand loader. Number 7 is, sometimes a load that you are trying to develop is just a bust. It's not going to work. You need to understand, when you look at things, if you're shooting and you've run through a full ladder test of how you're going to develop this load and nothing is shooting the way you want it to shoot, you might have something that's off somewhere. And that primer may not agree with that powder. Your seating depth could be off. That brass may not function as well as you want it to, or the volume may be a little off. The powder that you have just may not agree with your rifle and that projectile. There's so much stuff you have to do, but that's the fun of reloading. If you are a reloader, is tailoring that stuff specifically to your gun. Just understand that just because you have stuff doesn't mean it's going to work. You may have to start over with a different set of components or change components in order to get the result you're looking for. Number 8, there is a lot of stuff that you need to do this well. I didn't say do it to start. You can get started with a Lee loader and a bunch of other stuff, but there's a lot of components required of you as a hand loader in order to do this efficiently and effectively and do it well. There's a cricket somewhere in the corner that is very annoying. So when we look at this stuff, you have to understand that it's not just buying the components you need. That is a part of it, but you have things like presses. There are differences in quality when we talk about dies. You have powder hoppers, you have automatic powder measure systems, which is what my phone's sitting on, one of multiple that I have for loading different things. You have case checkers, you have case stands, you have the powder you have to buy, you have different scale systems that you could buy, calipers that you would need, and depending on how far down the rabbit hole you go, lots more. Tumblers, dry media, wet media. There's so much stuff involved in doing this at a highly efficient level that produces high quality ammo. Yes, you can get by with a single stage press, a corncob tumbler, a very basic lead trimmer that you do by hand, but it's going to be very tedious, and anything you do over 100 rounds is a royal pain in the ass. Number 9, not every bullet created will shoot from your gun. This one makes people mad, and it makes nobody madder than hand loaders, because we will find an exceptionally good deal on 1,000 projectiles of a bullet that we know we want to try, get out and realize that will not shoot in our gun. For whatever reason, our gun does not like that bullet. I have seen this happen more times than I can count, and I have boxes of bullets that started off with great intentions that did not work as I progressed on further. A great example of this is the 168 grain boat tail hollow point from Hornady, the match round for 308. It will not shoot in my gun. I don't care what I do, but the 168 AMAX shoots like a dream. But the standard hollow point boat tail will not shoot. It is a royal pain in my ass, and I look at it every time as a waste of a lot of money because it just won't shoot, and eventually you hope you find a gun that does like that bullet. But just know as you do this test, you're wasting components every time. Number 10, sometimes reloading isn't necessary. Now, if we look at things like 308s, which have a kind of a smattering of different bore designs and diameters, please, for the love of God, be quiet, cricket. You have all of these things that can go, these inconsistencies in the way your chamber's designed. But if you look at a lot of the newer rounds that are coming out, 7 PRC, 6.5 PRC, 300 PRC, 6.5 Creedmoor, 6 ARC, these rounds are designed match from the get-go. They were built around having a match chamber reamer made for them. So there is no fluctuation in how that chamber is designed with the cartridge you're trying to shoot. You actually get match grade, like true match grade performance tailored to your gun pretty much every time because they're all designed exactly the same. So in cases like that, you can get very consistent factory off-the-shelf ammo that will replicate the best you could do as a hand loader. But where it really shines as a hand loader is if you shoot 5.56, 223, 224 Valkyrie, 350 Legend, 308, 30-06, 9mm, you can make a lot of crazy good stuff. But just know that sometimes it's not the answer. The answer is just buying factory ammo. And then on that note, that 10.5, but sometimes it is very necessary. Think things like 308, 30-06, 5.56, match loadings for those, because you can tailor spec that ammo to your specific gun and get the best result humanly possible that wouldn't otherwise be accomplishable by this brand of match ammo versus that brand. So after that, if you're a prepper, is it worth it? 100%. It's 100% worth it. But keep in mind, as a prepper, you have to buy things like primers, cases, all of this stuff, and have lots of it on hand because you're going to create the finished product that is ammunition. So you're going to need a large stockpile of several components, and you're dead duck out of the water if you're missing a component, right? So if you've developed everything you have around Varget and you run out of Varget, you are no longer hand loading that ammo. You have to go back to the drawing board and figure something else out. Just understand that hand loading is a very valuable skill to have because you at least understand the way pressures and building ammunition works going forward. So if you are a prepper, it is 100% accurate and well worth your time. Magic Prepper released a video, I think, today on this very same subject. So good timing on that for us. Kind of an honorable mention here is sometimes it is in fact cheaper than buying ammo, even today. We look at some of the stuff that is incredibly hard to get our hands on. Think the 5.56 Fusion round from Federal, which is essentially a badass self-defense round, a gold dot. You look at things like that you can't get loaded normally, like Barnes MPG or the multi-purpose green round. Stuff that looks like this guy, super cool, right? This is a copper polymer matrix round, super frangible, highly devastating on soft tissue, one of my favorite projectiles ever made. This is not available in a factory loading. However, it is perfectly creatable with your own components and a little bit of time. Hence the nickel-coated case. I can tailor this stuff to what I want to see. This is a great example of that. And number 13, sometimes it is more than worth it to do this. And that is because there is something magical about creating a round that is tailored to exactly what you want. And I will tell you that there is no greater feeling on the planet than creating a hand load for hunting season and then harvesting a deer with ammunition that you created. There is something liberating about that. You have total control over every single thing that happen. If you are super anal retentive, reloading is what it is. But if you have the attention span of your average housefly or 3-year-old, don't hand load, because you're going to blow something up you don't want blown up. So if we look at just a couple of little things, one of the areas where I say sometimes it's more than worth it, we'll look at this guy here. So the SIG Marksman, this is a 77 grain boat tail hollow point OTM open tip match round using Sierra bullets, Sierra 77 grain Match Kings, loaded up in 6-hour brand new brass, and we're talking about 2,750 feet per second. That's the standard for Mark 262. However, I can create that exact same round. So if we look at this, this is $1.40 per round today. And I will tell you that back in the day, when I would hand load ammunition, back in the day, 2019, early 2020, we were talking about 3 cents for a primer, 30 cents for a brand new case, not even using like range pickup brass, but brand new match brass, 30 cents per case, 12 cents in powder, and 26 cents for a Sierra Match King projectile. Now, when I say in powder, you wonder how you figured that out. A pound of powder is 7,000 grains. You use this amount of powder to create what you're going to do. But now, if I were to do the exact same load workup, buying all of the components now, I would look at 7 cents for the primer, 33 cents for my case, 18 cents for my powder, and 40 cents for my projectile. Right now, if I were to build ammo with the components that I already have, I would spend roughly 71 cents per round to create Mark 262 equivalent made by me, spec'd out my gun. I know it shoots sub half-inch groups out of one of my guns. I could do that if I were to do the exact same thing with components bought today at my local gun store. I would spend 98 cents per round, which would basically mean that we're looking at what Mark 262 actually cost you. Black Hills ammo, it's $60 per 50 rounds. With the old school stuff, when I said it'll never be as cheap as it used to be, I could build 50 rounds of Mark 262 for $35.50 per round and have total control over the process. Right now, it would cost me $49 to build the same 50 rounds, but it's still cheaper than $60 to buy 50 rounds of it created. And once I have the setup and all of the stuff I need, and if I bought my components in bulk, I can now make thousands of those at the same time. It is a lot of fun to get into. You can find yourself doing crazy stuff. Aside from building just Full Metal Jacket, we can load up things like Lehigh Extreme Defenders, or if you want to play with rounds that you can't really find anymore, stuff like the Federal Guard Dog 105 grain. I can create all of these things because I can buy my bullets in bulk. And when I say buy my bullets in bulk, typically when you would order things, they would come in a box like this from Midway. And if I move this guy out of the way, what do I have here? I have a box of 147 grain Hornady XTB projectiles. I paid for 500 projectiles that are in this box. I paid $33 when I bought it. So, food for thought, fun stuff, guys. Is it right for you? Hard truths for people that don't want to hear it, but it needed to be said, and I hope it helped you guys in some way, shape, or form. So again, I am Uncle Freedom. You can find me at Uncle Freedom 213 on Instagram, or Uncle Freedom 213 at outlook.com. Go ahead and reach out to me with any questions you have. I will do my best to answer your questions or get you the answer you need or get you in the right direction. So take care of yourself, take care of each other, and until next time, I'll see you later.